Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Let's Just Talk radio show and Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World. Our guest today is Michelle Rohlf, and her new book is Losing Her, Finding Me, A Mother's Story of Estrangement and Self-Discovery. Actually, she's had a lifetime of focusing on relationships and encouraging others to cultivate their own healthy relationships. She speaks at retreats, women's meetings, and Bible studies. She has a passion for mentoring and discipleship, whether it's be one or one-on-one or in small groups. Married to a wonderful, supportive man since 1995, Michelle resides in Phoenix, Arizona. She has 2 daughters, 2 grandsons, and 2 small, fluffy dogs. Losing Her, Finding Me is her first book. I want to welcome you to our show today.
Hello.
And my son lives in Phoenix, Arizona, in Queens Creek.
Queens Creek, right.
Queens Creek. How long did it take you to write the book, Losing Her, Finding Me?
Well, I started writing it in 2014, and it wasn't about estrangement because I wasn't estranged at that time. Mm-hmm. So I was just writing my history and my childhood and all that stuff that goes on with that. And then after my daughter walked away from us, the Lord just said, this is about estrangement. And so I started writing about my experience with the estrangement.
So when did you publish it?
It goes out on August 20th.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
You know, you're very candid about the difficulties, but tell me how it happened. How did the estrangement happen, if you don't mind?
Well, it was one Christmas Eve, and it had been contentious the entire year. We had babysat my grandson for 2.5 years, and then they quit letting us have him for that whole year. And then when Christmas happened, Christmas Eve, I said, you know, can we have our grandson for an overnighter? And that's when they told us that we could not see him anymore. And they grabbed him and ran out of the door, and that was last time I saw him for 3 years.
Was there a reason why?
Well, in my book, I really chronicle that. It's very complicated because my daughter, Naomi, was had a very rocky beginning, and she had a lot of rejection and abandonment issues, and I think that all came into play, and that's when it kind of like accumulated. And
situation.
Yeah.
Are you back together again?
We are.
That's great.
We are back reconciled, and I get to see both my grandsons. So the second grandson she was pregnant with when she left, I didn't know. And the way I met him was we bumped into them at the mall. And that's how I met my second grandson.
Wow. For readers struggling with a difficult parent-child relationship, how will Losing Her, Finding Me encourage them? Michelle.
I think it will just show there's a lot of it. I did a lot of self-discovery through the estrangement. I was enmeshed with her. She was my identity. So once she walked away, she took me with her. So this was a huge journey of finding myself, finding out who God is to me and who I am to Him, that my daughter was not my savior or my answer, that God is my answer and my savior. So this will really help, I think, mothers find out who they are apart from their child. You got to find out God has a purpose for us apart from our children.
Did writing the book offer any outlet or personal therapy, and how long were you estranged from your daughter?
It did. I'm sure it did a lot of therapy, just writing it down and having to relive it. And So, yes, I definitely did. And I was estranged from her for about 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Do you have any other children?
I do. I have my youngest daughter, Lilo, and she was 8 years younger than Naomi. And unfortunately, she was put in the middle of this. So it's like she went through a divorce.
Right.
So it's really tough. Right now, she's reading the book, and
Right.
she's texting me and saying, "Did this really happen? And I don't remember this." And so she's really working through some issues too by reading it.
Right. This is the cover of the book. It's beautiful. I love the colors.
I do too.
And go ahead.
Just to say, the flowers on the front are crocuses, and the significance of crocuses is they bloom through the snow.
Oh, wow.
And that's a huge message of my book, is that we need to bloom even though we're in a bad situation, that
Right. So
there's always hope.
So, how does your daughter now feel about the book? And is it difficult for her to have her struggles depicted in print? Has it helped her?
No, she has not read it. She wants nothing to do with it. But I asked her 4 times if I could write it.
And what did she say?
Yes. She said yes. And by the 4th time, she said, "Mom, do you want me to say no?" And I'm like, "No, okay, I won't ask again." But relationship's more important than a book.
That's right.
So if she would have ever told me no, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
But she said yes. But she doesn't want to read it. It's kind of like,
You can probably understand why.
yes.
She may, as she grows older, and when, I don't know how much older than you are.
Yeah, she's 32 now.
She's 32. Okay, maybe in her 50s.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll want to read it. And I think you should be very proud that you were able to, and God helped you to write the story. Am I right?
Yeah.
For readers struggling to heal from childhood wounds, and all of us have that in some way, shape, or form, how will your book encourage and help them?
It tells you my journey and what I did. I went through recovery, and I found out about codependency, and I found out how I was enmeshed with my daughter. So that was one avenue, is going through a recovery process really helps. And that really brings up all your childhood stuff. You work through it, you talk about it, you take it to the Lord and see what He has to say about it. So I think just seeing the things that I did will help give you ideas of what to do.
Right. Did you find out when you were going through that period of time that was your mother codependent upon you?
Yes, and her mom on her.
So it just kept going on and on, right?
Yes.
And I could probably say that, I don't know if I think my mother was codependent upon me, more so than me being codependent upon her. Because being the oldest of 7, I had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And at a very young age. And I just wanted to run away at one point, and that's what happened with my first marriage. I married because I wanted to get away.
Yeah.
And then you find that out. So, are there any details in the book that you have forgotten until you began the process of writing your story?
Yes, actually, there were some things. When I did the audiobook, and when I was reading the audiobook, there were things that, as I was reading it, I was, oh my gosh, I wrote this. How did I know this? I don't remember it happening. But when you're writing, you're in the scene, you're there in the place, and you're just write what happened. So yes, there were a couple times that just, oh wow, I forgot that happened.
How did you handle writing about negative, deeply personal things involving loved ones?
I took him to Jesus. When I was because I didn't want to write anything mean or bad or like vindictive about anybody, especially my daughter's ex-husband. So whenever it came to a place where maybe I would say something that's not kind, I would take it to God and I'd say, please help me write this so that I can get the message across, but it doesn't have to be the meanness in it. And I believe he really did that.
Let me ask this question. Is she remarried?
She is not, but she does have a permanent boyfriend right now.
She's happy.
Yes, yes.
And maybe the first husband had something to do with any of this, or not?
Yes, I believe he did.
Right, and sometimes that can happen, and that can divorce you from your family,
Yes.
unfortunately. There were times that happened with me, but it wasn't my family, it was his family.
Oh, wow.
And when I divorced him, it was, and now we've talked to each other after 35 years. I saw him at my granddaughter's wedding. I got to see his wife, who he's been married to for like 50 years.
Oh.
And my boys, my second husband actually raised them. My boys called me up and said, "Mom, thank you for doing it for me. We
Oh.
appreciate it." So how did the process of writing this book impact your relationships with people you write about?
There's no impact, really. Everybody is very positive and excited about it. There is a part in the book about I had a sister-in-law who killed herself, and so I made sure that the kids and my brother was able to read that part because I didn't want to make more pain for them. So, but they've been very supportive and great.
That's good.
Yeah.
My brother killed himself too.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's
And
hard.
It was, he almost took my mom and dad with him, or my mom and stepfather with him.
wow.
And the sad thing is that he did it by carbon monoxide poisoning, and I almost didn't make saving my parents.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Oh boy.
But he was a very troubled individual, and it was really sad. And I'm really close to his children today.
Oh, that's so good.
And also, I think my mom, when she passed, she knew that she had done everything she could.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, where can we purchase your book and when?
You can get it anywhere books are available, and the Redemption Press website. I don't have it on my website, but if you want to reach out for any kind of encouragement, if you're estranged from a child, you can find me at michellerolfwrites@gmail.com, and I will write back and encourage you.
We'd love to have you come back and do a television show, another television and radio show with us. I want to thank you so much for
Oh, I'd
joining
love
me
to.
today.
Thank you for having me.
And I can't wait to read the book. I know you're going to send it to me.
Yes.
And so don't forget to go to our website at KathrynRaakersWorld.com. That's Kathryn, Rakers, Raakers World.com. That's our syndicated TV show. Thank you very much for joining me today. Have a wonderful, wonderful life ahead.
Yes.
And great to see that you and your daughter are back together.
Thank you.
you. Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World and Kathryn Raaker of Let's Just Talk. Let's Just Talk is our radio show, and Kathryn Raaker's World is our syndicated television show. Our guest today is Sandra Flach. Her book is Orphans No More. Sandra is the mom of 8 children, 5 through adoption, 2 diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. She encourages and equips foster and adopted moms through her weekly Orphans No More podcast. Sandra is co-founder of Justice for Orphans and serves as the area director for Care Portal. Sandra and her husband Wayne have been married 34 years. They reside in upstate New York, where they love to spend time with their 5 precious grandchildren. I want to welcome you to our show today. Let me ask you, how long did it take you to write the book, and how long has it been out?
The book was released a year ago, and it took me a series of several years to write it, but it was released in May of 2021.
Why did you decide to write it?
Ooh, good question. I think a lot of first-time authors will say that God told me to, and I have to say that that's the same answer for me. I really felt compelled by the Lord to write our story.
That's wonderful. And your husband was extremely supportive in the venture?
Not at first.
Not at first. Okay.
So, well, our first adoption, we have 3 biological children, but our first adoption was a kinship back in 1999. We welcomed home a relative, an 8-year-old little girl.
Okay.
And eventually we did adopt her. And then a few years after that, we felt called to international adoption. And when I shared that with my husband, he was completely on board for our kinship adoption. But when I shared, let's go to Ukraine and adopt orphans, he was like, maybe one day. So it took a while for the Lord to get a hold of his heart, but he did.
So you adopted somebody from Ukraine.
4, a sibling
4
set of
children.
4.
Wow. I can't imagine what that was like. And how old were they when you adopted them?
We adopted 3 the first time. In January of 2007, we brought home a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And then we found out there was a younger one and went back in 2010 and brought home a 5-year-old.
So the situation in Ukraine today is such a mess.
Yes.
There are so many children that are displaced right now. Is there 4 million, 7 million? How many people are out of Ukraine at this point?
Oh, goodness. I haven't heard a recent count, but it's in the millions. And unfortunately, it's women and children that are among most of that population.
Right. So your children can't go back to Ukraine right now to see it even, right? Am I correct?
Right. None of them, the only one that has gone back was the youngest of the 3, went with me when my husband and I went back in 2010 to adopt his younger brother.
Right.
But no one, humanitarian aid, missionaries, Christian organizations are going back in to help and serve the people who are struggling there, but
Right.
not really visitors.
Right. So how long did it take you to write the book?
A process of about 4 years,
4 years.
on and off. Being a first-time author, I really had no idea what I was doing, so it took a while to learn. I had to learn as I went.
Let me ask what it's been like to be a mother of 8 children and 5 grandchildren. Tell me that.
It is exhausting, but currently we have just the 2 youngest kids home, which are 2 teenage boys. We have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old boy home still. They'll be home for a much longer period of time because they're both prenatally exposed to alcohol, so they have brain-based disabilities. So they're a lot more work, but they're doing great. They're doing great. We have lots of supports and things for them. But we do have a large family. Most of our kids live nearby. One of our kids lives across the country, and they just had a baby. So I actually have 6 grandchildren right now.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but we love having a large family.
Now, when you brought these children into your home, did you have to buy a bigger house, or what did you do to accommodate all of it?
Yes, that's a very good question as well. So we had a beautiful home that we had built. We live out in the country, many acres. But we had 3 biological children, and I adopted our daughter through kinship. But when we realized we were going to be bringing home a sibling group of 4, we put an addition on our home. So now we have a huge house and we're down to 2 kids, but it was beautiful and perfect for having a large family.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Let me ask this question. What was the most difficult part of writing the book?
Oh, goodness. Learning how to write was the most difficult part. I had a writing coach that helped me through that process. But I was a journaler from way back. So every trip to Ukraine, I had a journal with me, and I journaled every day. So I had a history record basically that I could go back and look at, and knew what we did every day and had all of the details I could look up.
What did you think of Ukraine before it was practically obliterated?
Yeah, it's a beautiful country, and people. We met wonderful people. It's very different. You'd walk down the street and think you were kind of post-World War II, it would look like, and then you'd walk down another street and there would be a big Jumbotron TV. So there's kind of a clash of old world, new world, but we met so many wonderful people, and it's a beautiful country.
You know, my family is from Poland, and Poland brought in so many of the Ukrainian children, and my family who came from Poland were basically, they were going to go back to Poland. They never intended to live in the United States. They wanted to send money home. So when Poland took a lot of the children, and you could tell that they were really welcomed into their country. So let me ask this question: is there something that you can say that we can do to help orphans or children or foster children? It needs to have a wonderful. I've worked with different different organizations like the founder of Wendy's, and actually one of my partners, my radio partners from the past, actually adopted 2 children that she had in foster care, and now she has grandchildren and whatever, and she won the award. She won the Dave Thomas Award, and it was wonderful to work with them and to work with foster children and adoptive children. Do you work with many organizations?
So we founded a nonprofit after we adopted our children, and the nonprofit is Justice for Orphans, and our mission is really to inspire, educate, and equip the church, the faith community, to step into this space, and whether they can adopt or foster or just support families that are on that journey as well. There's something for everybody to do, and it's important for the body of Christ to, we love because God first loved us, and we want to demonstrate that love to children in crisis. So there's the foster care system, over 400,000 children in foster care, over 100,000 waiting for their forever family. So you could be praying for children and families in crisis. You could open your home to children in crisis, and you can support families that are already doing that and have children in their home.
So is there another book in that you want to write?
I have one on, yes, there's one percolating.
Okay, that's good. So is your husband helping you with that one?
Nope, I'm the writer.
You're the writer. So let me ask you this question, Sandra. Tell us about the different chapters and what's in the book, actually. Can you give me an idea? Is it different stories?
So it is, the first 3/4 of the book is really our family's adoption journey, how all of our kids came home, the process that we went through to bring them home, the ups and downs of international adoption, and then what life was like when they all came home, because that was quite an adjustment. And then eventually we learned that we really weren't equipped to parent children with trauma histories. A couple of our children were prenatally exposed to alcohol, so they've been diagnosed fetal alcohol syndrome. So we had to get training. That's one of my first things I tell families that are interested in foster care or adoption. You need to understand and learn everything you can about childhood trauma, as well as prenatal trauma, such as prenatal exposure. So that's a lot of what our organization does. My podcast, which now has the name the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, my listener base are foster and adoptive parents, and they're tuning in for the encouragement, for the support, and to just hear stories from people that are on the same journey and get it. So most of the book is about our family's adoption story, but then the last part I wrote about what I learned about our spiritual adoption as being children of God through the lens of being an adoptive mom.
So how did your children, your biological children, handle all of this?
So we set them down when we decided we were going to go to Ukraine and adopt, and had them be part of the conversation. Our oldest at the time we adopted was 15. We had a 15-year-old, 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And they just were like, okay. They really didn't have any questions. Our daughter that was our adopted daughter through kinship, she was excited because I think it gave her an opportunity to be, I'm not going to be so different because I'm going to have kids like me. But they fully embraced their new siblings, and we actually traveled to Ukraine as a family. The first few weeks, our biological kids were with us, and then they went home. And then we're also a homeschooling family, so because of that, everybody was home together when we came home, and we really could focus on just bonding and getting to know one another, and that was perfect. That really helped solidify our family, and our kids are still close today.
That's great. That's wonderful. Where can people buy your book?
wherever books are sold, of course, as well as my website, sandraflach.com, which is also where I blog to foster and adoptive families.
That's wonderful. And your podcast is on every day?
My podcast, new episode drops every Monday. Bonus episodes are on Fridays, and that is that's on most of the major podcast platforms. And the name of the show is The Adoption and Foster Care Journey.
Well, this has been wonderful having you as a guest on our show today.
Thank you so much, Kathryn.
And we want to have you back again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this will go on our radio and television series that we're doing, the Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk. I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Sharing your story.
Thank you.
And any more adoptions in the future?
According to my husband, no.
No. Okay. Anyhow, thank you so very much. And here's the book. Don't forget this, and don't forget to go out and purchase it, and give that website and where people can purchase the book again.
Available wherever books are sold, and you can also find a signed copy at sandraflach.com.
And thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to go to our websites at Kathryn Raaker's World, that's Kathryn, Raakers, Raakers World, WORLD.com, or letsjusttalk.com. And thank you so much for joining us today on our show.